It's my great pleasure to introduce His Excellency Wang Qishan, Vice President of the People's Republic of China. This year, Mr. Vice President, you have brought the largest ever Chinese delegation to Davos, and it's actually since over 40 years, 41st year, that since 40 years that China is participating. But it's the largest delegation, including ministers and vice ministers from industry, reform, foreign affairs, energies, and so on. More than 50 Chinese CEOs of large companies are also among us. Vice President Wang, you have played key roles in the reform of China's political, economic, and financial sectors for the last 30, 40 years, both at the regional and national level and in key sectors. You have been a key figure in leading the extraordinary growth in China and bringing the country into the international system, exercising multiple important functions on a provincial and on a government level. Here, today, Mr. Vice President, we welcome you with your experience, and we look forward to hear from you how you see the future of your own country and the future of the world. A very cordial welcome to you, Vice President Wang Qishan.
Dear Dr. Klaus Schwab, ladies and gentlemen, friends, it gives me great pleasure to attend the 2019 World Economic Forum annual meeting. This year is the 40th anniversary of the relations between China and the WEF. Over the past 4 decades, Davos, this lovely small town with its unique appeal, has become an important platform for China to learn about the world, exchange views, state its position, and seek common understanding. This year, 2019, marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. The past 7 decades have witnessed remarkable achievements in China's development. Our nation has made a historical transformation in terms of social productivity and composite national strength, and delivered initial prosperity to its people who were once struggling to meet their basic needs. China's status and influence have risen as never before. Indeed, China has increasingly become an important force for upholding world peace and promoting common development. Many foreign friends have asked me what has made it possible for China to achieve so much in development and progress, and how will a stronger China engage the rest of the world? Well, these questions can be answered from historical, cultural, and philosophical perspectives. Given the close linkage between the past, the present, and the future, one needs to learn about China's past in order to understand its present and forecast its future. China has an uninterrupted civilization of more than 5,000 years. And the Chinese nation has both gone through sufferings and made splendid achievements. When the West embarked on industrialization and embraced the oceans, China fell behind because its emperors chose to shut its door to the world. And this made China a victim of foreign aggression. Since modern times began, China was beset by crises at home and abroad, and ravaged by wars and chaos, which inflicted untold sufferings to its people. However, in a century of darkness, the Chinese people, rising one upon another in an unyielding spirit, never stopped searching for a way towards national renewal and prosperity. 70 years ago, The Communist Party of China, rallying the Chinese people around itself, engaged in an indomitable struggle and succeeded in establishing a new China in the ruins of an old semi-colonial and semi-feudal society, thus achieving national independence and the liberation of the Chinese people. Since then, the Chinese nation has gained rebirth and entered a new era of development. We will stay true to the founding mission of the Communist Party of China, uphold its leadership and China's fundamental socialist, political, and economic systems, and be guided by a people-centered development philosophy. From the founding and building of the People's Republic to the launching of the Reform and Opening Up program and the shifting of focus to economic development, we have moved away from revolution to reform, from a planned economy to a market economy, and from isolation to all-round opening up. In this process, we have broken free from the fetters of dogma and utopian thinking, freed our minds and taken a realistic and pragmatic approach, and applied Marxism's basic tenets in the context of China's realities. 4 to 5 generations of us Chinese have, going through twists and turns, probed a way forward. Through trials and errors, with many lessons learned and heavy prices paid along the way, we have made great accomplishments and embarked on a path of building socialism with distinctive Chinese features. Thanks to 70 years of hard work and dedication, we have turned a weak and impoverished agrarian country with backward productivity into the world's second-largest economy, the largest industrial manufacturer, and the largest trader of goods, creating bright prospects for the great renewal of the Chinese nation. Well, this is what history has told us. The Chinese nation, long among the leading civilizations in the world history, has made unique and significant contribution to human progress. The profound historical and cultural heritage of the Chinese nation is in the genes of its people. What we long for is to see China regain its rightful place among the nations of the world and achieve great rejuvenation. The Chinese nation, as we know today, originates from a number of nationalities that embraced and integrated into one another throughout history. We are a peace-loving, open, and inclusive nation that keeps abreast of the times. While keeping the fine Chinese culture alive and strong, we also respect other civilizations and values, and draw inspirations from other cultures. As we continue to follow the socialist path with distinctive Chinese features, we will respect other people's independent choices of paths and systems. The Chinese culture values the teachings that one should help others to succeed while seeking one's own success, create a world for all, treat others with respect, and pursue win-win cooperation. We reject the practices of the strong bullying the weak and self-claimed supremacy. Today, China's interests and future are closely linked to those of the world. While developing itself, China also wishes to work with all countries for common development and a community with a shared future for mankind. The advances in China in the past 70 years are not a godsend, nor a gift from others. Rather, they are made by the Chinese people through vision, hard work, courage, reform, and innovation. By striving to meet people's aspirations for a better life, we can surely win their support. United as one, we Chinese can overcome various risks and challenges. A land of 9.6 million square kilometers, a people of nearly 1.4 billion, and a history of over 5,000 years, these are the underlying features of China. And they are the source from which China derives confidence in its path, theory, system, and culture. We have embarked on a right path that fits China's conditions and is in keeping with the trend of the times. And we will further improve and enrich socialism with distinctive Chinese features through reform and opening up. This is a path we believe in, and we will steadfastly forge ahead along this path. Ladies and gentlemen, in recent years, problems in the global economy, such as lack of new growth drivers, unbalanced development, and uneven income distribution, have intensified. New challenges brought by new technologies, new industries, and new forms of business have mounted. Many countries are increasingly looking inward when making policies. Barriers to international trade and investment are increasing, and unilateralism, protectionism, and populism are spreading in the world. All these are posing serious challenges to the international order. Will economic globalization move forward or reverse course?
The economic globalization, which gained rapid ground in the last century, was started by Western developed countries or the Mediterranean civilization. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, technological advances have significantly reduced the geographical distance and other barriers to exchanges among countries and accelerated the economic globalization process. The BRICS countries, Vietnam, Indonesia, and other emerging economies have risen. As a result, economic globalization has reached a new stage as we now know. Western multinational corporations and financial institutions are the main drivers of economic globalization. As they seek maximum profit in their operations, they allocate resources to countries with low-cost production factors and sound business environment when building global industrial chains. In this process, China has moved up from the low end to the medium and high end of the global industrial chain. The nearly 1.4 billion Chinese who are enjoying greater prosperity have unleashed huge demand backed by purchasing power. And this has unlocked enormous market potential that no one can afford to ignore. Economic globalization represents an inevitable trend of history, given the enormous potential that derives from harnessing the comparative advantages of countries and enhancing economic connectivity. In response to the problems and challenges in the world today, the international community needs to make serious and deep-going analysis and, more importantly, take collective actions in line with the trend proactively. Under market economy conditions, too much emphasis on efficiency often comes at the cost of equity. While there are both internal and external factors that cause a problem, the internal one plays the key role. Therefore, we must take a targeted approach to address the problems that have emerged in the process of economic globalization. Development imbalances need to be resolved through further development. Countries need to press ahead with structural reform, strike a right balance between equity and efficiency, adopt effective policy measures to prevent the worsening of income inequality, and fend off the impact on some regions and industries caused by new technologies and market competition, so that all people stand to gain from continued development. What we need to do is make the pie bigger while looking for ways to share it in a more equitable way. The last thing we should do is to stop making the pie and just engage in a futile debate on how to divide it. Shifting blame for one's own problems onto others will not resolve the problems. To address its problem, China's choice is to focus on managing our own affairs well. Socialism with distinctive Chinese features has entered a new era, yet China also faces the problem of imbalances in development. The principal issue confronting the Chinese society is that unbalanced and inadequate development cannot meet our people's ever-growing needs for a better life. We will pursue development as the top priority, promote coordinated economic, political, cultural, social, and ecological advancement, and move steadily towards making China a moderately prosperous society in all respects. We in China have continued to carry out reform across the board, resolving many tough issues and navigating dangerous rapids. Major headway has been made in supply-side structural reform. Digital economy and other emerging industries are flourishing, and an innovation-driven China is taking shape. Decisive progress has been made in key battles of poverty alleviation, with the number of rural people living in poverty cut by over 80 million since 2013. Thanks to stronger measures taken, China's environment has been further improved. The Communist Party of China, the governing party in China, has strengthened itself by strictly enforcing party discipline, and a crushing victory has been secured in fighting corruption. We in China have continued to promote opening up across the board, advance international cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative, upgrade an open world economy, and work for a new type of international relations featuring mutual respect, equity, justice, and win-win cooperation under the principle of consultation and cooperation for shared benefit. China remains committed to building world peace, promoting global growth, and upholding the international order. Ladies and gentlemen, new technologies bring opportunities, but they also create risks and challenges. Every major breakthrough in scientific discovery and technological innovation has greatly boosted human development and progress. But it has also led to the restructuring of value chains, industrial chains, and supply chains, and disrupted the balance in the economy and society and between countries and regions. Indeed, such breakthrough challenges the existing rules and order. As a result, adjustments need to be made to both the economic and social governance of countries and global economic governance. We are meeting here under the theme Globalization 4.0, shaping a global architecture in the age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is highly relevant. The Fourth Industrial Revolution, with its speed, scale, and complexity, and the way it shapes human society, represents a significant evolution of the globalization process. We must work together to shape the global architecture in the age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, with the vision to create a better future for all mankind. We need to uphold the security of all mankind. We need to explore the adoption of relevant rules and standards in a phased way, while leaving broad space for the dissemination and application of scientific discovery and technological innovation. We need to accommodate in a balanced manner the interests of all countries, especially those of emerging markets and developing countries. One should not ask the whole world to address only the security concern and comply only with the standards of developed countries or individual countries. It is imperative to respect national sovereignty and refrain from seeking technological hegemony, interfering in other countries' domestic affairs, and conducting, shielding, or protecting technology-enabled activities that undermine other countries' national security. We need to respect the independent choices of model of technology management and of public policies made by countries and their right to participating in the global technological governance system as equals. We need to uphold multilateralism, engage in extensive dialogue and cooperation based on mutual respect and mutual trust, and jointly build a system of rules for technology and new international cooperation framework featuring peace, security, democracy, transparency, inclusiveness, and mutual benefit, so that all people can gain from technological innovation. We need to uphold social equity and justice and ensure technological innovations are made in compliance with the rule of law and internationally recognized norms, and that they are guided by us humans, meet our needs, and be compatible with our values. We need to prevent technological advances from being turned into tools of committing terrorism and crimes or violating individual rights. We need to improve policy environment and promote social prosperity and stability. We should both respect and protect the rights and interests of innovators. At the same time, we should provide necessary education and training to enable the public to adapt to the fast advancement of technology and ensure that such advancement helps raise living standards, create jobs, protect the environment, and promote the long-term interests of mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, in this changing world, making advance is like climbing a mountain. It is commitment, conviction, and confidence that drive us forward. In this era of unfolding economic globalization, all of us mankind share a common stake. As a Swiss proverb goes, torches light up each other. Let us illuminate the path ahead, progress together, ascend to the summit, and jointly create a great future for all mankind. Thank you.
I'm sorry. When I was reading my speech, I was thinking about one thing. I was thinking about when playing golf, there was a teaching from the coaches saying that you should never raise your head. No matter you are the pusher or the driver. Because whenever you raise your head, there is a head up, there will be a problem. So when I was reading my speech, I was always reminding myself that I should not raise my head. But it was not easy to do that. I tried to do it without a heads up because I don't have this tipping screens beside me. Our soft power has not reached that stage, and people like us do not have spin doctors to teach me what to do on the stage. I myself have never received such trainings. So I reminded myself, when I read my speech, I have to do it well without raising my head. But I found it to be not easy. But whenever I try to raise my head, I see people try to film me, try to take a photograph of me. And that's why I just lowered my head. So the journalists might have some problem with it. So for the audience, I believe you might feel that it's good that I just read my speech. Thank you.
Vice President, congratulations for your speech, which gave us a deep insight into your thinking about the present world and about Chinese economy. I would like to follow up some of the points and add maybe some questions. First, in an important speech which President Xi Jinping made last month, actually, and I had the pleasure to be present at the conference on the 40th anniversary of China's reform and opening up. After 40 years of success, as you described it, China has come and has transformed itself tremendously into the second largest economy of the world. But what can we expect from the next phases of development? You mentioned it will be innovation-based, but can China really maintain the speed, even if we speak only about 6% of economic growth? We have to be aware this means doubling the economy in 12 years. So how do you see, you are the economic great thinker, how do you see the next phase of economic growth in China?
My answer is that in my speech, I was not just talking about the 40 years, I was talking about the 70 years. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic and also for China's economic development. I remember in the year of 2016, I participated in a discussion on the Chinese economy. By the end of 2016, for China, if we were able to maintain a 4.5% GDP growth, we would be able to deliver a world of society in all respects and the doubling of our GDP, a task put forth by Mr. Deng Xiaoping. Now the number is 6.6. I think this is a pretty significant number, not low at all. Possibly in the whole country, be it the government, be it the market, the CPC is trying to remind people that speed does matter, but what really matters for the time being is the quality and efficiency of our economic development. That is why, in my view, despite the challenges, risks, and difficulties we face, I believe that by 2020 we'll be able to deliver our mission of achieving a society of initial prosperity in all respects. I believe we will only attain the goals exceeding the expectations. This is an undisputable fact. Well, there will be a lot of uncertainties in 2019, but something that is certain is that China's economy, China's growth will continue and will be sustainable. That's the end of my answer for this question.
Now, there is a backwards movement to globalization, and many countries have to deal with populists who negate the need of globalization or who pursue egoistic, self-centered interests. What would you say to those people who put globalization, to those populist people who put globalization into question?
My general feeling is that globalization represents a trend of history. As this trend of history progresses, imbalance is something inevitable. In philosophical terms, balance is relative, but imbalance is the absolute reality. So now we do face a lot of imbalances, and in the middle of imbalances, for those groups of people who feel the imbalance, they are making their responses. I believe it is understandable, and this is inevitable. So the fundamental issue, in my view, is to stick to the approach I mentioned in my speech. That is, we have to continue to make the pie bigger. And in this course, governments of all countries have to do something to reduce imbalance, to strike a better balance between efficiency and equity, put in place policy measures to do whatever they can to make sure that this imbalance will not aggravate and try to contain the momentum of expanding imbalance. So in my view, if that is done, globalization will have a further guarantee. And for those people who question globalization because of the imbalances, once their interests are well protected, this counterwave against globalization will phase out, and the trend of history will continue to surge forward. That's the end of my answer.
Vice President, 2 years ago, when President Xi Jinping was here, and I remember he pointed out that the global economy, the world, was facing three challenges. First, the lack of robust driving forces. Second, for growth. Second, inadequate global economic governance. And number three, uneven global development. Now we may be at the end of an economic upswing cycle. It was one of the longest upswing cycles after World War II. And we face, as our global risk report has shown, many risks. So we may be faced with a global crisis again. Do we feel we are well equipped for mastering a new global downturn, and what could your country contribute to avoid such a risky situation? How could your country contribute managing the risks?
President Xi, when he was here 2 years ago, in his speech, I believe his speech had a major impact on the world. And last year, Vice Premier Liu He was here, and this year I am here. The participation of all of us here at this forum is geared, actually, to try to help the audience better understand President Xi's message. Remember that in what I said in my speech just now, I said that we have to understand better the socialist thinking in China in the new era. So I try to make some explanation to this new thinking, what it's all about in this new era. In my view, what you said, you mentioned that we are approaching the end of the upswing in economic development, and there is the possibility of an economic crisis. So, as the saying goes, be it a blessing, be it a bad luck, we cannot shun away from it. So, what if there is really a crisis? Is it true that we are approaching the end of the upswing? I believe there are different perspectives on this. This is like when I answered your question just now. For China's development, there are all sorts of views. Someone is saying that China is approaching the end of its growth, or we have already reached the end of the growth. But if you ask us, we believe that we have not approached the end. We are actually pursuing more sustainable growth. So it's really something that takes all sorts of different views and conclusions. What matters is that we manage our own affairs well. For China, if its economy is doing okay, then given the connectivity between the Chinese economy and the rest of the world, I believe this itself, good economic performance in China, is a contribution to the world economy and to humanity. I have a view. In 2008, the global financial crisis, how come the crisis passed so fast? Unlike the previous crisis of the last century, we had a major depression as a result of the previous crisis. My personal view is that an important reason is due to the rise of the emerging markets and their participation in globalization. That's something that enabled the crisis originating from the Wall Street being dealt with in a relatively short span of time. That's always my view, because I know China well. Someone is saying that, well, the disease is, occurred, is accumulated in the Wall Street, but it seems that the Chinese are taking more medicines than Wall Street people. So, since the global financial crisis, all the measures and policies adopted by the Chinese government reflects the fact that the Chinese government is a responsible government. Indeed, when we looked at China's economic reality in those years, the policies China put in place in those years helped the whole world to put the crisis behind in a speedy fashion. So China is not alone in doing so. In my view, all the emerging markets are making such a contribution. That is why I'm still optimistic about the prospect of the world economy. But we have always to have this bottom line approach. We have to prepare for the worst case scenario. So in the case of a crisis, in my view, this is like when you catch a cold, when you have a fever, what really matters is whether the whole humanity have the wisdom to tide over the difficulties in philosophical and historical terms. I don't think a crisis, any crisis, is big enough to crush humanity. Actually, it's an opportunity. We test our wisdom and vision and ability. So, firstly, I do not agree with the view that, well, there's bound to be a crisis, but we do live in an uncertain world. So, crises are likely. So, in the cases of crisis, the above mentioned are my view.
In this case, no worry about the Chinese debt situation?
Well, actually, when I answered the first question, I talked about the Chinese economy. So this is a repetition of the previous question. So when we talk about the problems, we may feel extremely sad. But when we talk about the achievements, we could be extremely happy. So my view on China, when this is applied on a mega scale to the whole world, I believe the conclusion will remain the same. But on the whole, I'm an optimist. Luckily, well, I noticed that Secretary Pompeo delivered a view, his speech via the video, the teleconference. Well, he seems to be an optimist. Well, since he's an optimist, possibly I'm even more optimistic than he is.
Last question, and I'm sure that the many Americans in the audience are waiting for this question, because the US-China relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world today. And of course, the world is very concerned about the future directions of this relationship. Could you please share with us how you see the nature of the worsening of the relationship between the two countries, and how this relationship, which is so crucial for the world, could be repaired and enhanced?
For the Chinese and US economies, I believe they are in a state of mutually indispensable. This is a reality. Either side can do without the other side. So the conclusion is that there has to be mutual benefit and win-win. Cooperation serves both interests, while confrontation harms the interest of both sides. This is a basic judgment.
Vice President, I have to follow up. Yes, but there are certain conflicts, and Secretary Pompeo was quite, I wouldn't say optimistic, but he foresees some progress made in the coming days. And we know it's not only a trade relation, it's not only related to trade issues, it's related to many other, particularly to issues related to the fourth industrial revolution. Just one last word on this issue.
Well, I talked about the fourth industrial revolution. I think this revolution is about productivity. When productivity changes, the root of the fourth industrial revolution still lies in scientific discoveries and technological innovation. As a matter of fact, the fourth industrial revolution well, in the course of development, we have to address the problems of development. Where does the drivers come from? I believe the driving forces are coming from science and technology. Fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, herald the new drivers of growth, new drivers of technological progress. They are bound to deliver a new outlook for our development, and they are bound to bring hopes and blessings for humanity. But at the same time, it is bound to challenge some existing standards and rules. So for those standards and rules, it is up to every one of us to take a realistic and pragmatic approach to make corresponding changes in keeping with the times, to gradually change them. And the rules should not be walking ahead of development. That's one of the key messages of my speech. I was trying to echo the theme of the forum. There are certain people who are very idealized. So before a new thing has emerged and taken shape, they try to set the rules for them. They try to set the standards for them. I was in charge of financial supervision when I was working at the central bank in China. I used to tell a story. In Chinese history, there was a story of a devil and a demon. So when the devil is 8 inches tall and the demon might be 10 inches tall. So I was trying to draw an analogy between the policeman and the thief. It is like the policeman is always in one step behind the thief, because if the policeman is always one step ahead of the thief, before the thief tries to steal, the police is always there. In that case, there will be no thieves in the world. So this is like the relationship between the regulators and the market. So I said on the spot that when the devil is 10 inches tall, maybe the bigger demon should be 8.5 inches tall. So this is like the relationship between the thief and the policeman. So for 60% of the thieves, if they could be caught and things stolen could be recovered, then we'll have significantly fewer thieves. But if there are no thieves at all, I believe that will be too good to be true. That's the difference between having ideals and becoming idealized. That's the difference between regulators and the marketplace, and that's the difference between standards and innovation. Actually, I delivered those messages in my speech, but I try to expound on my thinking in answering this question of yours. That's the end of my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. When President Xi Jinping was here, he also quoted Charles Dickens, and he said, we are living in the best of all times, and we are living in the worst of all times. And I think we agree what we have to do is to create, to use the technology and apply the fourth industrial revolution to the benefit of all people in the world in an equal way, and then we have achieved the objective.
In The Tale of Two Cities of Charles Dickens, that line of Dickens is so philosophical, and that places him in an invincible situation, because it is the right thing to say under all circumstances. A prosperous Athens city is at the same time a most corrupt Athens city. A most prosperous Rome city is at the same time the most corrupt Rome city. Well, that has been the saying in Europe in history for many, many years before Charles Dickens. That is in line with dialectical approach. There are always two sides of the same coin. When we have accomplishments, there will always be challenges and risks. The bigger the achievements, the bigger the challenges. The bigger the achievements, the bigger the cost. So the vision of a human being, or the shadow of a human being, is commensurate with their size. You have a bigger shadow than I do because you are taller than me.
And now we end with a philosophical, basic discussion. Thank you very much, Vice President. Thank you.